So welcome everybody, delighted you have joined us for this session. I'm Mike, 19 years at Marks and Spencer leading the sustainability journey there, putting nature right at the very heart of what the business was doing across complex global supply chains. Delighted that we've got a session today to explore how businesses engage as citizens in everything it's doing on nature and how we drive to scale the exemplary work we're going to hear from 4 speakers talk about now, but how do we take that to scale across the entire economy? Now, look, let's be clear. The world is not in a good place. I mean, we've got political turmoil, COVID turmoil, economic turmoil. We've got natural turmoil. We look at that lens predominantly through the world of climate change, but we also have a biodiversity crisis happening conjoined with it as well. You know, we talk about 1 million species under threat around the world. We talk about forests being lost. We talk about aquatic species being lost as well. But right back here in the UK, I mean, the Wildlife Trust has been talking about over half of British species being at risk of extinction now. So this is not something that's happening just on the other side of the world. It's happening here and now. And a lot of it can be placed at the feet of big business. How we consume, whether it's the clothing, the food, the technology that we take for granted in our lives, business is causing that footprint. And as I say, we've got 4 brilliant speakers I'm going to introduce now who are going to explore this with us through their practical experience of working with their own organisations, but also driving us to answer that question, scale, scale, scale. So Mia, thank you for joining us from Jordan Drive Vita. I know you're sustainability manager there. Again, you've personally driven so much of the agenda. Laura too, across at Ecover, you've been right at the heart of driving change. Guy, you almost need no introduction. Having built the Riverford brand, a hugely successful business, passed it across the employees, turning over 60 million a year. But more than just the Riverford business, you've also driven an agenda, a challenge for the entire economy to do things in a better kind of way. And again, Juliet, again, barely needs introduction, inspirational leader, founder of Good Energy, chief exec as well. And all of you have got a good, rich story to tell. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you just in the 90 seconds to 2 minutes, please no more than that, just introduce what your company's been doing in this space. And then we'll start to get into the conversation about how you've been building partnerships to drive nature change, engage your customers, and what you want going forward as well. So Mia, if I could start with you, just tell us a little bit about the Jordan Drive Vita story.
Yes, so I'm Mia and I work on Jordan Cereals as a sustainability manager. And what we do at Jordan's is we work with a variety of different partners to protect wildlife on our farms. And this isn't something we've just been doing for kicks recently. We've been doing this for over 35 years since the founders, Bill and David Jordan, set up Jordan Cereals in a little town called Biggleswade. It is a real place, back in the 70s. And what we do is we work with the wildlife trusts, Leaf and the Prince's Countryside Fund to make sure that we are really protecting space for nature on each of our oat farms. And oats are a really crucial ingredient in all of our granolas and country crisp. And we also make sure that we're through working with those partners that we're protecting the rural communities as well that help create and protect that space. So that's what I'm doing at Jordan Cereals with some great partners helping to create more space for nature.
Mia, thank you. Juliet, if I can come to you now, please.
Hi, my name's Juliet Davenport and I'm the founder and CEO of Good Energy. So we set up 20 years ago to do something on climate change. My background, I'm a climate scientist by training. And essentially where we started from was just focusing on climate actually, Mike. So nature didn't particularly come part of it until we started to get real challenge around where you were developing a lot of renewables energy. What impact was that having on nature? And could that start to put back? And I guess sort of when we started developing our own sites, not either buying power from people who develop their own sites or developing our own sites, we looked at what we could do on all of those sites, not only to engage with the local community, but to engage with local wildlife as well. And I think that we did a lot of sustainability planning. We did a lot of wild seeds. I think we became sort of big traders in wildflower seeds at one point, actually. And it's how do you get some of these technologies? Because although climate change is incredibly important for species survival, you also need to make sure that you're building the habitats to become more resilient as well. So I think from our point of view, we've been involved in it from a climate change point of view for 20 years, but more and more we see it as an overall sustainability circle that you can't do one thing without doing another.
Juliet, thank you. Laura, over to you.
Hi, so I'm Laura. I lead sustainability for Ecover, and we are a brand. It sounded like there's a lot in common actually from a Jordan's perspective in that we were born in 1979 and we were born essentially creating laundry detergent that was phosphate free in response to the damage that phosphates were causing to the water systems. Now today, that isn't an issue in that, regulation has kind of come into play to stop phosphates from entering our waterways. But we of course have a combination of environmental crises, that are very much alive today that we're working to try to solve through our products and through our programs. So I think where nature has come into play, whilst we've always been inspired by nature and looking to protect nature, in the last year or so, we've really been looking at how can we kind of step it up in response to the climate and nature crisis, looking at both how we can reduce our environmental footprint, of course, in our products, not only by dramatically reducing our carbon footprint, but also making space for nature as well is a way that we like to talk about it. And then on the other side, really demonstrating how nature-based solutions can be a powerful response to the environmental crisis that we're facing, whilst the problem is interconnected very much so between nature and climate. We feel like the solutions really are as well, and we want to demonstrate that.
Laura, thank you very much. I want to come back to the concept of nature-based solutions in a moment. You're starting to talk about a marketplace protecting nature. Before we do that, Guy.
Hi, everyone. I started growing vegetables on my dad's tenanted farm in 1986. And as Mike said, actually, it's 100 million now, Mike, post-COVID. So, we have been, for a bunch of old organic hippies, indecently commercially successful, I suppose you might say, which has brought some of its own problems. I get over the last 20 years, I have become increasingly aware that just being organic isn't enough given the problems that we face. So we did initially a project with Exeter University, and I think about 2005, sort of measuring our environmental footprint, concentrating on climate change, so greenhouse gas emissions, and on the basis that the fairly truism that if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. I don't really believe that, but it certainly has some truth. And that led us to look at where we buy from, to stop buying anything from heated glass, never to air freight. And then we repeated the exercise over the last 2 years, and that has again led us, we're doing a lot of work on packaging, reducing packaging use, installing solar panels, electrifying our delivery fleet. We campaigned a lot on meat consumption and its environmental impact, and quite a lot on a curbside collection regimes and the need for something a bit more rational there. But I do actually think the most significant thing that we've done in all that time is becoming employee owned, because I do believe that capitalism and greed and overconsumption is what lies at the heart of most of our problems. And I struggle, though I know capitalism can deliver incredibly innovative solutions, when it's built on such shaky foundations, namely that we're all motivated by greed and that to be satisfied we have to consume more and more. I just think even if we manage to say, stop using fossil fuels, I think we'll just create another problem for ourselves, whether it's lithium or something used in I think we need, anyway, I've probably said enough, Mike, I'll stop.
Yeah, you've never said enough, because I think what we've had in that first 5 minutes is 4 or 5 really good hooks to continue the conversation. So the first thing I want to just draw out from all of you is just how you've become such successful businesses with nature at the heart of what you do. I think, Mia, you touched in passing about partnership. I want to come back to that. Guy, you mentioned the importance of measurement. We've talked about citizens, so obviously lots of people are coming to you to buy the products, but how do we get even more going forward? But Guy, I want to also circle back a little bit later about the new approach to capitalism that has nature at its very heart and people at its very heart. So none of that's going to be off the slate for discussion. But Mia, let me just come back to you now. You mentioned Leaf, you mentioned Wildlife Trust. Just to expand upon what they brought to you and what you've offered them.
I think what they've brought to us is real expertise and credibility. So we did have a scheme before that was wildlife friendly. That's always been at the heart of Jordan's. But in 2016, we kind of revised that scheme because we realized we needed even more expertise on it. So the beauty of working with the Wildlife Trust is they can they create a bespoke plan for each of our farmers that is really tailored to the wildlife on that farm. So they're brilliant in terms of being the real local experts and making a difference there. And then with Leaf, they're brilliant in terms of giving us a holistic approach to farming. So making sure that we are doing everything we can, or our farmers are, to grow the oats as sustainably as they can as well. And I think the beauty of teaming up together as well is you've got an awareness piece too in terms of people's minds. So when we were on Jordan's, we're trying to talk about conservation grade. No one got that. What is conservation grade? What does it mean? By teaming up with established experts that have their own brand awareness and have their own following, like the wildlife trusts, we help drive awareness of what we're doing in a way that's much easier for people to get, because everybody knows about the wildlife trusts. The wildlife trusts support wildlife. So by teaming up with them, we're instantly communicating as well what we're doing in a really easy to understand way. And in terms of what they get back from us, I suppose it's a partnership working together. So we're making sure that we team up on events, we support them in terms of their initiatives as well. And it's helping to drive the awareness of not just Jordan's, but also of the Wildlife Trust, of Leaf, of the Prince's Countryside Fund. By working together, we can drive awareness of both and create a bigger impact than we could by ourselves.
That's brilliant. And Laura, if you could just tell us the Ecover story in terms of partnership. And then Juliet and Guy, I'm going to come to you, but also sort of broaden the conversation beyond just partnership to engaging citizens in change as well. Laura.
Yeah, so from a partnership perspective, I think I would say that we know that some of these problems that we're facing, we can't solve alone. We also know that kind of business as usual isn't working. So because the challenges that we're facing are so big, I think at this particular moment, so as we were kind of going through the pandemic, we really saw a reset opportunity, and we saw that we didn't really have the answers, within our four walls, or even within, all of the partners that we're already working with. So we set up this Fertilize the Future Fund to really kind of ask people out there, change makers out there, to kind of bring unique solutions to the challenges that we're facing. And we really wanted to kind of broaden the scope of who we might work with, because we just know that we need new solutions, and we know that we don't understand what the answer is. So it was really kind of both trying to understand, what organizations are out there, what the landscape is, where the gaps are, who's already working together, et cetera, just to really open up and broaden, the scope of who we might work with. And it's been really, really interesting. We've had over 750 applications to that fund, and with a wide variety of nature-based solutions. And we really want to demonstrate how well those are working to solve these joint interconnected issues, how they also provide, benefit to local communities as well. And it's a real learning process.
And Amir, Laura, thank you for the really tangible examples about how external partners are helping you run your business differently. I want to sort of continue this partnership theme, build it across the wider economy. So Juliet, I mean, your experience of working with partners on your actual land, but then how you're working to drive partnership across the economy to think about nature in particular, but also the wider environmental issues to help people change the system together.
Yeah,
you can't just do this on your own.
No, completely, and that has always been at the heart of our business model. Actually, is to work with partners, because if you look at some of the business models of the big energy companies, that they tend to look at acquisition, so they go and buy things. That's how they work. We've always tended, probably because we don't have much money, but we've always tended to work in partnerships, and I would say that partnerships, thinking about the whole economy, you start with kind of innovation and R&D, and we do a lot of partnerships with universities. We work with universities, research, early stage research, to kind of start to see where these new ideas are coming from and what possibilities they are. And I've been lucky enough to sit on something called the NERC, Natural Environmental Research Council. And that was really helpful for me, because it gave me fantastic insight into some of the brilliant works going on in Lancaster University, in some of the catapults, in some of the different areas in the UK, because we have world-leading environmental science in this country, which is always a bit of a shame that we don't celebrate that more. So I think in terms of partnerships, we think about it in that area. We also think in terms of environmental partnerships. So for a long time, we worked with Friends of the Earth. We've always been in contact with people like WWF, the Wildlife Trusts, and depending on what project we're working on, we would bring on appropriate partnerships. In terms of public-facing partnerships, I guess I mean, first of all, I mean, I completely agree with Guy. I think some of the funding models we do need to revisit, and I think there's some brilliant work going on in terms of what is the future purpose of corporation. Should it have a much bigger societal purpose than it has today? We were originally funded by our customers, so the majority of our company is still owned by our customer base, which has always meant that we can keep a lot of the sustainability at the heart. And it does, where your money, some people think money is a commodity. It isn't a commodity. Money completely depends where it comes from, and it has the face of the person of where it comes from in the DNA of what it makes companies do. So I think it is a really important part. But I mean, the last partnership is probably a slightly unlikely one in this context, but we've worked very closely with BAFTA, particularly in the BFI, on sustainability in that sector. And what's really interesting about those are some of the biggest communicators we have in our society. It's one of the biggest growth areas, the creative industry. And also, if you've ever been on a film set or a TV set, the amount of disposables. I mean, we could do a guy recreating catering for films in the UK, because it is appalling. But we've done a lot of work with them, but also they are massive communicators, and they are really important in part of bringing that part of the economy along with us.
Thank you. Now, Guy, I mean, you've personally exemplified the need to change. Your business, Riverford, has exemplified the need for change. But what role has partnership played in getting to where you are now, and how can it help us change the wider economy?
Well, it's mostly our kind of trading partnerships. I did found a co-op in 1993, which is where most of our UK vegetables come through, and that's a very close trading relationship, and which has a formal basis in them being a co-op and us being pretty much their only customer. And we have similar relationships with suppliers abroad. We don't really sponsor. I think probably about the only thing we sponsor as such is the Oxford Real Farming Conference, which I think is absolutely brilliant. But generally, I don't think this applies to any of the other speakers, but I do have a bit of an issue with the Bill and Melinda Gates model of, you make a lot of money doing something hideous and then you give it to someone to buy you a place in heaven or something. I would just much rather use our money and our influence within our own control to farm better, to look after our now co-owners better, to look after our suppliers better, to do things right in the first place, even if that means making less money. And so on the whole, we don't sponsor things, and even if we do, we don't really want to have our name on them. Okay, well, for instance, we give 50 quid a month to Wikipedia because I do think unbiased information is incredibly important. So, but we don't ask for our name to be anywhere. Anyway, so also, I'm a miserable bugger and I don't like talking, and I'd rather be out in the field. So I'm not very good at collaborating with anyone anyway. So,
Guy, don't apologise for that. You do things differently, and that inspires us to follow, which I think is critical. I just want to sort of build beyond partnership now to a different form of partnership, which is with your customers, the citizens that buy products from you. How do you engage them in your point of difference in terms of that you are a different type of business, you care about nature? By shopping with you, you're actually doing something positive beyond just the product you buy. So let's just sort of unpick that sort of customer engagement side. And maybe, Laura, if I can come to you, because I know Ecover do a huge amount in this space. What are you telling your customers about what you do and the benefits to them?
Well, I guess I would say that one of our mottos, I guess, is progress, not perfection. So we know that we're not perfect. So Guy, you were saying that we don't necessarily want to do something bad over here and make it okay by sponsoring something over there. And but we acknowledge that we can't kind of eliminate our negative, some of our negative environmental footprint. Right. So we have, on the one hand, we're dramatically really focusing on reducing that. So reducing our carbon impact, reducing the negative impact that we have in a number of different ways. But on the flip side, and which is why we also look at we want to get to net zero. So in order to do that, we do need to do some things outside of our value chain to offset that. And we tell that story and we talk to our consumers about that, because we really want to just have an open conversation with them around where our impacts are. So just that transparency, I think, really goes a long way. And it also enables us to kind of start talking about some of these more difficult issues and where there are trade-offs. And I think we get a lot of appreciation from citizens, on that note. So, for example, arming ourselves also with a lot of information about the impacts of what we're doing enables us to be more transparent as well. So one of the things we've really focused on with consumers is the refillution, right? So getting as many people to refill as possible, whether that's in their local health food store, or whether that's in supermarkets. And we also know that, whilst plastic has a real impact on the environment, our biggest actual impacts come from our ingredients. And so it's also really important for us to be transparent that, yes, even if you're refilling, there still is an impact there. And what can we do and what are we doing to reduce that? So I guess what I'm saying is that it really starts with transparency, and that it opens up a deeper conversation. And we one of the things that we say is kind of oversimplification isn't the answer with consumers. It leads to polarization a lot of the time. And so we try to kind of get into those deep, conversations, really open it up. And our consumer is quite interested in having those conversations, which, isn't always the case. But I think they really live up to that kind of title of citizen, they're engaged and they really want to do what's best, especially now.
And Laura, what I love about what you just said there, it's not just passively telling your good nature story, it's driving behaviour change. So we'll pick behaviour change up as a thread. But Mia, just build upon that. Tell me a little bit about your storytelling.
So it's an interesting one, because when it comes to food, the things that we're all interested in first is, does it taste good? Is it good for me? Or you hope most people consider, is it good for you? And how much is it going to cost? So it's a real challenge sometimes communicating that there's more to it than that. So how we go about it at Jordan's is we try and find allies. So we try and find the people that are already interested in this, the people that are buying Riverford, the people that are buying energy from Good Energy, they're cleaning products from Ecover. We try and go and talk to those people first, the people that care, because although that is still, well, it was a relatively small group, it's grown so much over time. So for us, it's about, first of all, reaching the people that will be receptive to what we've got to say, and also it's about including them on the journey. So it's not just us going, we do great stuff, isn't that nice? It's about saying, look, you can come and do it too. So with Jordan's, 70% of the UK is farmland, so it's a huge issue that we're facing, an opportunity for us to get more nature into it. But 5% of the UK is housing and gardens. So there's a massive opportunity there as well for people to take their own action. It's not about saying, you do it, we won't. It's about doing it together and inspiring. So back earlier this year, we did a campaign called Leave It Wild, where we were just encouraging over that glorious May bank holiday, where we were all in lockdown, but we were all getting out into our gardens. Hold fire. Don't clean up your garden and make it perfect, because you're taking out loads of wildlife habitat if you do that. Do something similar to what our farmers do and just leave a little bit wild for wildlife. So it's about inspiring people that care to do something with you and not just talking about yourself.
Now, Guy, you've got a really good product story to tell your customers, which I know you tell very, very well. Do you have a conversation with them about reforming capitalism as well, the big story, or is that a different discussion?
I do try, and I get quite a lot of mail back saying I don't want my greengrocer, which mostly I ignore, and we do lose quite a few customers. I mean, my politics are well to the left of centre, and that has alienated quite a few of our Daily Mail, Sunday Times reading customers. But I think sometimes if you are a challenger brand, and I think, you've got to be prepared to upset people sometimes. My coach advises me I should be less frequently gratuitously offensive, which I am working on. But it is, anyway, I do think, and I just want to come back on quite a few things that Laura said, which I completely agree with, the importance of, in terms of our relationship with our customers and our interaction and our position as a leader, challenger, harbinger of change, I suppose. You know, the absolute key to that, and I actually had an email exchange with a customer last night who was saying, you know, I'll do my bit, you know, I'll try and eat as seasonally as possible, and I'm trusting you to do yours. So I really don't need to know the carbon footprint of the box. I don't need to know exactly how many tons of plastic you, because I trust you to doing that stuff, and I don't want you to be making bland statements, you know, all the time about signaling your virtue and stuff. Somehow, over the years, by being consistently, by not underestimating our customers' intelligence, well, probably more interest actually, but at the same time, not abdicating our own responsibility by saying we're going to give you choices, you know, and you can make the choice whether you buy the, you know, carbon negative one or the, you know, the one that's been air freighted in. I mean, that's just crap. We are not going to change the world by people making those choices, because those choices are normally incredibly complex. I think Maya referred to, you know, Noah's Law again, actually, about the trade-off around plastics and its usage and stuff. These are incredibly complex issues, and it's often not clear what the right answer is. And the only way you get is by doing the research. Actually, you really do have to invest in information in order to drive the right decisions. And the right decisions are not always the most popular decisions. You know, so we import from Spain rather than buy from heated glass in the UK. I mean, that has been, you know, that is counterintuitive and have been quite, but it has, you know, roughly a fifth of the carbon footprint. It's a no-brainer to my mind. So sometimes, and I do think that our customers do, on the whole, trust us to do the right thing, and it's taken years to build that trust. And, you know, making, you know, outrageous sort of claims, you know, we might own you a few brownie points, you know, in Westminster they abandoned using plastic straws, you know, wow, you know, we're all supposed to get excited about, let's, you know, you got to do the research, understand where the real impact is, and focus your efforts on those things. And I do, you know, I despair of most government on that level, and I despair of a lot of businesses. Actually, I think businesses on the whole are better and having a slightly longer view than, you know, our incredibly short-term government.
On that note, Juliet, you've got a whole playing field to explore, customers engagement, pick up whichever strand you want. And just a reminder to everybody, we've had a couple of questions from the audience. What's your advice to any charity listening to this about how to build a partnership with a business? Rich experience, particularly Laura and Mia, I'll come to you on that one. Juliet.
So I mean, I think there are various layers of engagement with customer, and I think we've actually touched on quite a lot of them, because I agree, if you oversimplify, you kind of lose a lot of your depth of knowledge and your depth of understanding. And what you tend to find is there are some people who just want to skim the top. They want to trust you. They don't want to know anything else. They just want to know there's some kind of tick boxes in there. But there are some people who will want to drill down, who really will engage. And I think what we try to do is do a balance between the two. So we do a regular, electricity isn't something you can taste. So you can't go, oh, it tastes great, it looks great. It doesn't. It doesn't smell great either. So you haven't got any of those other senses. So you really have to use your communication very, very hard. So it means that we use a lot of newsletters. We do a lot of blogs with interesting pieces, particularly questions we get back from our customer base, of answering some of these really quite complex areas like greenwashing, like how much power does a solar panel produce, or it sort of goes into a bit techie detail. But it just means that you've got layers there. That's not what you're going out in front with. It's just you've got the depth of the brand in there, and people know you know what you're talking about. And then what we've done more recently, we've used social much more recently, and we started to use video a lot, actually. Video is a great way of getting some simple messages over very quickly that are very engaging. And I think the last thing we're just running a campaign. We launched it this week of appointing a youth board, which we're really excited about. So that is a board of the future. We've always talked about having 4 kinds of stakeholders: our customers, our employees, our shareholders, and our future holders. Those are the people of the future who will live on our planet after we have gone. And our responsibility is as much to them as much. So this future board is going to be appointed from children year 7 to year 13. And they are going to come and advise us. They're also going to come and advise our real board as well. So they're going to be part of that. And I kind of hope, what I really want to do is get them in front of some politicians to hold them to account as well. And we'll probably give them some support to learn how to talk in public, do some communications, because what we need to do is give that generation a voice so they can stop the adults mucking up their world before they get there.
And you know, we've got Mock COP running at the moment, and I'm sure there's more common sense coming out of Mock COP and the youth voice than we'll get in 12 months' time in some of the pontification in Glasgow at the formal event. So, brilliant initiative. Of course,
Mike, can I? Yeah, I just want to, what Juliet said about having the kind of layers, I think it's incredibly important, you know, that you can show that you have done, you know, the research. When we stopped buying from heated glass, there was a peer-reviewed paper, you know, that you backing that decision up, but you know, no one's going to want to read it, but it is there if you want it. You know, in order to get the trust, you have to have the credibility, and the credibility comes from doing the hard work and actually amassing that information, which very, very few people are going to want to read. But it is important that it's there and it's accessible for those who do want to read it. So, you know, that sort of, and you can do that on a website and so on, you know, without making it, you know, indigestible for most people. So yeah,
Guy, thank you. Point well made. So Mia, Laura, you've got an audience here who are desperate to know how to do this. 3 bullet points each on how charities and other organisations can engage with corporates to drive the change that everybody wants.
Shall I kick off?
Yes, please.
So I would say it's being really targeted in terms of the businesses you're going after, because teaming up with a business, it needs to be an exchange, essentially. How are you going to be relevant to that business? They're going to give you something in terms of cash, hopefully. What do you give back? Be it expertise, just as we were talking about, you know, peer-reviewed papers. Is it around carbon? Can you give them expertise there? Could you give them access to something that their audience, the people they're trying to sell to, really care about? Do you tune into that? So it's, my advice would be, pick who you want to work with very carefully and make sure that you're offering something very clearly in exchange and demonstrating the value that you can really bring to them to win them over.
Yeah, thank you. Laura.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would also say that one of the things that we love in a partner is to help us actually understand the landscape. So when I was mentioning with the Fertilize the Future Fund, one of the things that we're really trying to understand is where the gaps in funding are. So for example, you know, there's a lot of funding out there, you know, and a lot of the time they're funding kind of big programs over multiple years. And there's some things that are a little bit more difficult to, or maybe a little bit more, you know, less interesting potentially, where, for example, where it's kind of really digging into some research, or maybe it's some kind of mechanism that's going to allow the whole system to work better. Those are the kinds of things that we're really interested in understanding, because we really want to kind of catalyze our impact. We're not a big brand, right? We, of course, we're growing, but we want to have a disproportionate impact for the size that we are. So it's kind of really, really looking for those projects that are going to kind of unlock a bigger systemic solution. So we're really looking for to understand that dynamic, understand their role in it, and really want to partner with us on kind of achieving that disproportionate impact for the amount of funding that we can put towards something.
Thank you. Really clear and really precise. Now, I want to put a word into the room that...
Sorry, Mike, but I just realised that, having said we don't partnership, we actually have a very long-standing partnership with the charity Send a Cow. We give them hundreds of thousands of pounds every year, and I love the work. And I was just listening to the others. I realised that they almost lost us when they took on board, when they became too focused on fundraising. I mean, I want to talk to people who are really knowledgeable and enthusiastic, and get the impression that every penny, or damn nearly as, you know, as many pennies as possible in the pound, are spent on delivering stuff. If I get the feeling that, you know, I'm talking to some smooth marketing person or whatever, I mean, honestly, it just makes me want to run away. And they did employ a CEO for a bit who was just like that, and we damn nearly dropped them. So I think if you do get in, and I know it must be incredibly difficult to penetrate, but you know, go for the long haul, you know, try and stay there and really nurture the relationship based on really doing stuff, not on words.
Juliet, anything that you've learned working with charity partners you'd like to share with the audience?
I mean, I think just making sure that your ambitions are aligned really is what are you trying to achieve? And because if you're not aligned, then what you immediately find is that things don't happen, and it becomes a difficult working relationship. Neither of you get what you want out of it, and it kind of falls apart. And we've worked with lots of different charities over the years, and it's interesting because there was one very big charity, which I won't mention their name, and actually one part of what we did with them, where they were developing their own renewables, was very effective, but the other part of the relationship just didn't work. And to be honest, it was us inputting to them was very effective. Them helping us really wasn't. So it has to be a really good balance in the relationship if it's going to work well.
And just picking up a couple of things that you all said: relevance, depth. So when I was at Marks and Spencer for 20 years, we were with breast cancer now. Marks and Spencer sells more lingerie than any other business in Britain. Number one customer is a woman 40 plus, number one employee woman 40 plus. Number one premature killer for them, breast cancer. QED, you're working it together. You fundraise, but that's to do something very special, like the Generation study that follows the health of 100,000 women and girls over a 20-year cycle to find the cause of breast cancer. It's not there flash in the pan for your advertising campaign, move on. You do it with depth, authority, and for mutual benefit. Now, I want to put a very challenging word in the room for us all just to riff off: greenwash. Are we seeing more of it as more businesses tumble into this world that something needs to be done, but they're all making bullshit claims out there? Guy, provocatively, I'm going to come to you on the word greenwash.
Well, I think you probably know what I think. I think people are getting a lot smarter, actually, and I think if you overclaim and underdeliver, you will be found out, you know, a lot quicker than you were 10 years ago. I mean, can you believe that it was government policy to grow biofuels? And I remember seeing photographs of Gordon Brown getting on a train with Richard Branson, actually, who was also into biofuels. Biofuels at that time were bad for the environment, full stop. Someone knew that. You know, someone knew that. It took my Exeter, you know, a week's research to tell me don't touch them with a barge pole. And, you know, so they knew. Anyway, sorry, I'm going on. You know what I mean? You know, it is by indulging in being greenwash and undermining, you know, confidence in people who are trying to do the right thing. You are worse than useless. It would have been better if you had not been born. You know, you are undermining the future of our planet and our children by overclaiming and under-delivering and making it really difficult for those who are doing the right thing to differentiate themselves. Stop doing it, really. And if you find someone do it, expose them.
Can't be clearer. Juliet, you operate in a marketplace which I'm sure is awash of some dodgy-ish claims.
Yeah, it's a very.
What's your view?
I mean, I agree with Guy. I mean, I think it does undermine those people who are really trying to change the market. And my view about a green proposition is it's not just about what you're doing today. It's what you're going to deliver tomorrow. It's how you're changing the regulation. It's how you're changing investment. It's how you're changing consumers' perception. So it's not static, it's moving, it's continue to disrupt. And I think that is the real challenge, is that if we all get moved out of the market, you lose your disruptors who are trying to really challenge this market and move it forward. And what's interesting, actually, we just seen a piece of research done by the Social something Foundation. I can't remember the names, I apologize. But what it says is, particularly in our marketplace, and that's probably because, again, it has no smell, it has no taste, it has no feel to it, is that they expect the regulators to be making sure there's no greenwashing. And actually, I think there is a greater space to, as Guy said, hold the greenwashers to account and really make it hurt if you are greenwashing. Because I personally think actually there needs to be a financial fine consideration in place, because otherwise you've got people undermining, you're going backwards and undermining those people who are truly trying to take us to this cleaner, greener world.
Yeah, and look, I mean, the clock's ticking down on a brilliant conversation, so I'm gonna bring things to a conclude, and I want you to try and help me here. You four businesses are brilliant. If the world was made of businesses like you, we would not be where we are today. If there's one thing the audience take from this is buy from you. That's too easy. I'm going to ask you to elevate yourself above your own proud businesses. How do we get scale in better capitalism, better products, better services, better behaviour? There's laws, the transparency. What is the thing that gets us to scale? And Guy, I'll come to you in a minute because I know you'll have strong views on this. But Laura, if I could just go to you, how do we get more businesses to follow the lead that you've set?
Well, you mentioned a few things there already, right? And I guess, and I've worked in different businesses, you know, before, of different sizes and with different strategies. And I guess what I would say is, like, I've seen lots of different things move a business, and as I'm sure you have, Mike, but it could be policy, you know, works very, very, very well. Campaigning NGOs work very, very well. And then challenger brands actually work really, really well, right? Even if you are a brand, have other brands out there who are trying to do it even better, right? So that really puts the fear into business, you know, is who's going to come and steal their share by doing it in a much, much more sustainable way. So I've seen all of those things work. We need to do all of them. And ultimately, you know, we hope that we're kind of putting that pressure on other brands, and that other brands will put that pressure on us.
Yeah, Laura, brilliant. Mia?
So I think there's another angle to it as well, which is how you can scale it up is within the culture of more businesses, giving people permission to care. So it is about a bigger mission. It's not just about creating the cash for shareholders. It's about doing it because it's the right thing to do. And I think if more people within their businesses were given permission to care, because there are a lot of really good people out there that really care about this, but probably feel they can't change it within their business at the moment. If more businesses can create that culture of care, more businesses can start to change in a positive direction. It can come from the ground up. So if you have that in combination with the factors Laura was saying, I think we could create some really big change.
And I saw a survey today that said 90% of young people currently working in the oil and gas industry are there to change it for the better. If it doesn't change, they're off, because this is talent that can be working anywhere. Ain't going to waste the time on an industry that doesn't want to change. Guy, what's your view on scale? How do we get there?
Well, actually, I'm going to follow up on what you just said, Mike. I do think one of the things that really gives me hope is young people not wanting to work for shitty organisations and not being taken in by the you know, greenwash and you know, we actually becoming employee owned and giving a voice to people, other people, you know, not just outside, you know, giving a voice outside the boardroom has really helped us, you know, empowered us to do the right thing. And I increasingly hear the people, you know, wanting to compete for the best talent in IT, in marketing, and so on. And people do not want to work for businesses that they don't feel aligned to in an ethical way. So I would say, particularly to young people, make your voice heard. And you know, a few unscrupulous employers will get rid of you, but you know, mostly they will listen. And you know, we have a forum both for our staff and ultimately an ombudsman if people are unhappy with how they're being treated, and we have the same thing for our suppliers actually. So you know, I think it's incredibly important. So I don't actually believe that strongly in consumers changing things through how they spend their money, because I just think there's so many barriers in the way, the biggest one being greenwash. But I do think, you know, there is actually greater power for employees to change the world.
Right, thank you. And Juliet, the final word of this session is yours.
So I would add to Guy, I mean, I completely agree on employees. I think it's so important. And I think nobody's going to want to work for a dirty company in the future. But I think the other area we could do is attach some of the things that we want in the future to money. So I think if we passed some regulation that basically said pension funds could not invest in anything that destroyed our biodiversity, added carbon to that would filter all the way through. And we're already beginning to see a little bit of that coming through some of the approaches on this. But if you can't spend money on the bad things from an investment point of view and a growth point of view, I think that would fundamentally help start to shift. And that is why the big oil majors are now working out what their future is, because they've been given 10 years by these guys to say, if you don't change, then we're putting our money somewhere else. And I'm beginning to see it across the board. I think NatWest said they'd never lend to another sort of carbon-based energy company again. It's just that rhetoric really, you've got it. If you have all of it, if you've got consumer, employees, and money, then hopefully we're made and we'll start moving.
Awesome. You've given me hope. You've been a brilliant panel. Mia, Guy, Laura, Juliet, thank you so much for sharing not just your ideas, but your energy and your drive for a better system. Thank you all, and good luck with your ongoing journeys. Take care, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Bye.